Well, it wasn't the start that Dub Nation wanted. The Warriors dropped the season opener. There's a lot to break down. I got Trice High. He directed the new Stephen Curry documentary, Wardell, and we're going to break down tonight's disappointing game that drops the Warriors to 0-1 on the season. Good news, folks. It's a long year, and there's more than enough time to turn this ship around. We're going to break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. You can follow Trice High on Twitter. Trice, you explain how do you spell that out? It's Trice High, but there's like numbers, there's digit. What the hell's going on?
It's Trice High, but the numbers are just the ones are just eyes. But you can search my name, Trice High, TRICE High HIGH. I'm very unique name. It's not hard to find me.
There you go. And again, you've directed this fantastic documentary. It was a 5-parter that's now emerged into one. And just search for it on YouTube. It's called Wardell. I had the privilege of being a part of it. I can't thank you enough for inviting me. But look, people are tuning in for tonight's Warriors game. This was a game that looked very winnable. The Warriors were trailing by 15 at one point. They came back. They had the lead, and then they lost the lead. And there was a lot to break down. First, I mean, what immediately sticks out is the fact that Andrew Wiggins played like absolute dog crap. He was a minus 22 in the plus minus. He played so bad that Steve Kerr did not have him out there at the end of the game. Maybe it's justified, maybe it's not justified, but that's how bad he was playing. Wiggins' stat line, he played 27 minutes in this game. He was 4 for 12 from the field, 0 for 3 from beyond the arc. Is that right? Is it 0 for 3 or 0 for 3? Yeah, my screen is like not showing well. Finished with 10 points, had 1 rebound, had no assists. Didn't have any turnovers. I think that was the only positive for Andrew Wiggins. But besides the fact that offensively he was inept, he was forcing shots, he was rushing shots. He wasn't in any rhythm. But defensively, he was also a disappointment. He was guarding Kevin Durant a lot of the times ineffectively. He was guarding Devin Booker a lot of the times relatively ineffectively. All in all, just a bad game for Wiggins. And then I don't think Klay Thompson is that far behind in terms of a bad game. Not nearly as bad in terms of plus minus. He was actually a plus 9, but finished with just 15 points, was only 3 for 11 from beyond the arc, was only 6 of 18 from the field. He had 3 turnovers, 2 of those being very costly late in the game. And I think what sticks out to me the most from this game, besides the fact that Trice, you and I, before we started recording, had a mutual agreement that Moses Moody should have been playing in this game in the fourth quarter. If you're going to play Kuminga, who I love, why not play Moody? Moody had the best first half of any Warriors player, statistically and otherwise. I'll break that down very shortly. But Trice, what was your immediate reaction? I guess here's my ultimate takeaway, and then I'll give the floor to you. I don't think it's only one game, but I don't think you're going to be able to pull off beating the best teams in the NBA with a backcourt that has a 6-footer and a 6'2" guy. I love Stephen Curry. I think Chris Paul is an excellent fit for this team. I don't like them out there together. That is a massive liability defensively. There's a reason why at the end of this game, the Suns were taking wide open threes. Those threes were not contested. And it was largely because you have the super small backcourt. There was a lot of things going on tonight, but that is the first thing that stuck out to me is those two should not be out there together. If you're going to have Chris Paul on this team, have him run the second unit, have those two stagger each other. Don't play them out there together. I've said the initial complaints. Again, Wiggins, I thought stunk. Klay was just meh at best. Trice, great to see you, man. And what was your immediate reaction?
All right, well, Cyrus, I appreciate you having me. I wish we were going to talk about a win on opening night. Obviously, that's not the case, and I'm sure we'll get into all the reasons why. The number one thing I think is important before we get into anything is to keep in mind that it is game one of a very long
Yeah,
season. So before anybody starts getting ready to jump, like let's make sure everybody keeps that perspective of,
absolutely.
the Warriors are a championship DNA team at their core, and they're experimenting with a lot of new kind of nuances and wrinkles to this team that they haven't had before. So there's a lot
Right.
to take into with that. Now that being said, doesn't make them free of our criticism. I mean, that's why we're here as fans. They have the right to observe and make comments. I think the biggest thing that can be noted from this game is the backcourt issues as far as size goes. And I think that's something that people I mean, Chris Paul has been the biggest acquisition, the biggest thing that's been talked about coming into this season as far as like the newest wrinkle that the team has.
Mm-hmm.
And so it hasn't been, it's hard not to be focused on that in the first game of how that was going to work together. I liked how Chris Paul played overall on the offensive end. I think that he added an element to the Warriors that, was much needed, especially with Draymond not being there as a facilitator. The way he was able to move the ball around and kind of get guys in spots was really good. But defensively, you have to be able to stop people, and it is too hard to have two guys like that. Chris Paul's not who he used to be. He's not got the young legs to be that pesky defender he was at one time in his career. Obviously, Steph has made strides as a defender, but neither one of those guys is two-way studs in that backcourt. So I think it's important for the Warriors. And I think there was a lot of reports before the game started, even just today, about how it's becoming more and more likely that Chris Paul is going to be moved to that second unit. I think it's only a matter of time before that happens. It seemed to me, and maybe I was reading too much into the headlines, but a lot of the reports, especially when it was talking about Draymond being out tonight, it kind of seemed like Chris Paul was only starting tonight because Draymond was out, is what it kind of seemed like from some of the wording of some of the reports before the game. So I think we're going to see a lot of different lineups early in this season as this team tries to find a good chemistry. I think tonight was the result of that lack of chemistry on the offensive end. It seemed like a lot of guys were just trying to find their rhythm in this team and in this offense. I think there was a couple possessions that I saw where guys kind of seemed a little out of place and a little out of sorts. But all that being said, it seemed like the biggest issue came on the defensive end tonight,
Oh,
in my
absolutely.
opinion. Obviously Klay, especially down the stretch, obviously Klay and Wiggins struggled, and you're never going to beat a good team like Phoenix with or without Bradley Beal with that kind of struggle from two of your main scoring guys. You're going to need that to beat a dynamic offense. So I think that it was a mixture of obviously chemistry issues, obviously two of the main guys you needed to step up scoring the ball struggling, and then the defensive things. So we'll get into all that. I'm
Yeah,
sure as the show goes
and like
on.
you talk about the defense, for example, and again, this is where a small lineup can hinder you defensively. The Suns in the first half, for example, went on a 10-0 run. This was when the Warriors had a small ball lineup out there. When I say small ball, I mean Klay and or Wiggins were handling the four, right? You had Steph, you had Chris Paul out there, Klay, Wiggins, and Looney. Looney did not have a great game either. But the Suns went on a 10-0 run. I believe they went on a 13-0 run against that small ball lineup. It catches up to you very fast. We talked about Moses Moody. Moses Moody in the first half, I think he had the best first half of any player. His stat line in 12 minutes of play, he had 11 points. He was 4 for 5 from the field, led all Warriors scorers in scoring in the first half. And remember, the Warriors trailed 61-46 coming out for the third. He was 2 for 3 from beyond the arc. He was a plus minus. He was a +2. He also had 3 rebounds, had 3 steals. Look, Moody to me is awesome. And so what does he get rewarded for with that awesome first half where he led all the Warriors scores? We see him briefly in the third quarter for 3 minutes, and then we never saw him again. Did not see him at all in the fourth quarter. So I thought that was an issue. If you're going to bench Wiggins and play Kuminga over him, you need to start extending that thought process a little more. Whether Chris Paul is the next person in line, whether Klay Thompson is the next person in line, Moody needs to play. I think Moody in year 3 has the potential to explode. And to not see him out there at all was very disappointing. Another player, like looking at Looney's stats, for example, Kevon Looney finished this game a -7. Do I have this right? Or is no? Sorry. Okay, here's the box score. 28 minutes of play. He had 7 points. Was a -11 in the plus minus. Did grab 11 rebounds, so at least he contributed there. But why not play Trice Davis? Trice Davis looked awesome in the preseason. I thought this was a player we were going to be seeing like immediately, and we didn't see him play at all. We also saw Corey Joseph play. Look, it wasn't a lot, but he still played 3 minutes 42 seconds. It was an absolutely atrocious 3 minutes and 42 seconds. He was a -12 in the plus minus, had no points. He was defending Devin Booker. I did not understand that assignment at all. Why not bring Brandon Pajemski in the game? Like, the Warriors are at a point right now where you have young athletic individuals on that bench, and they showed you in the preseason they're not a liability, man. These kids are ready to play. I really wish we saw those two. I thought they could have contributed quite a bit. The Corey Joseph thing, just I don't get that at all. I mean, but anyway, I'm gonna get your thoughts. We have a lot to discuss here when we come back. And V, like, who writes, you knew I was going to say something about Pods and Trice Davis. I mean, should I not? I mean, what's your, like, should I not bring them up? I mean, Trice, would you have liked to see them play out there tonight? Do you think that would have been a bad idea? Like, you tell me. I don't know.
No, I think you're right on with as far as they should have had some kind of opportunity on the floor. I think one thing that has, for better or worse, been a staple of Steve Kerr since the minute he's become a head coach is similar to, and I think he learned this a lot from Popovich, coming from kind of that coaching tree, just learning so much from him, is rookies just don't play a lot for him. That's just how he does things. And I think to evolve in this game, you have to be willing to kind of step out of your philosophy sometimes and try new things. I really liked the way that Pods and TJD looked in the preseason. We talked about it when I was on here after the Lakers preseason game.
Right.
They looked really good in those games. I liked the way that they kind of showed some confidence, and that's the benefit you get from drafting guys who played multiple years in college and have a little more experience than a 18-year-old Kuminga who played no college basketball, or a one and done Moses Moody. Guys who had less experience in college. Like, these guys are older players, people who should be ready to contribute right away, similar to, I know obviously this isn't everybody's favorite on the Warriors side of things, but similar to like an Austin Reeves, what he was able to do for the Lakers. He was a rookie that came in and was able to get minutes over the course of his rookie year because he was older. He had experience. He was a veteran in terms of rookies. And I think you have to be willing to kind of step out of that box if you're Steve Kerr and say, hey, some of these young guys have proven that they can bring something to the table that we need. And it's my responsibility as a coach to say, regardless of my philosophy, I have to be willing to do whatever it takes for us to win basketball games. Because at the end of the day, you have a window that, whether we like it or not, is not going to be open forever for this team to win another championship. And at the end of the day, while this is the first game, it is important to look at the big picture. You have to do what it takes to win games now.
Right.
That's what's important. And if that means bringing in some of the young guys and changing up your philosophy, then so be it. We've talked before about Moses Moody. We talked about him a little bit before the show. I talked about him last time I was here, how I'm a big fan of him.
Same.
I think he proved in the first half what he's proven at times, even last season, that when he's in the game, most of the time, good things happen.
Yeah.
He is a player that has a nose for the ball, whether it's loose balls, making plays happen on offense and defense. He always has some kind of impact on the game, and you need guys like that, especially when Wiggins and Klay are struggling. There's no excuse for him only playing 3 minutes in the second half. There's no and the 3 minutes he did play in that third quarter, I'm not sure if he was on the court at this exact time, but they made a key run in that third quarter to make a comeback and actually take the lead. Now, I'd have to check and see if he was, because that was a very quick 3 minutes. I'm not sure if he was on the floor for any part of that stretch, but if he was, it just speaks to that. Him being in the game leads to good things.
Yeah, absolutely right.
I think he provides the shooting that you need from a wing. He provides the defense, and he's got a little bit of shake to his game to create too. So I think Moody has to see the floor more. I think the young guys have to get a chance to prove themselves. And I think Curtis has to be willing to open up the rotations a little bit and take what's working in games instead of sticking so tight to his rotations that I think sometimes he gets caught with a mindset of how the game's going to go. These guys are going to play this many minutes, this many minutes, this many minutes. And he doesn't like to come off of that. He doesn't like to stray from that. And regardless, come hell or high water, if a guy's playing well, they're still not going to break through that glass ceiling of the minutes restrictions that Kerr's kind of put on them. And I think sometimes you got to be willing to adjust that, because guys are going to prove game to game that they deserve to step up and show what they can do.
Absolutely. We're going to touch on that a lot more. We got to give some love first to FanDuel, one of our excellent sponsors here with Locked On Warriors. And look, the NBA season started tonight. You could bet on that. Obviously, the NFL season is in full swing. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. I'm not saying guaranteed tonight because I'm Charles Barkley is just a total dick when it comes to the Warriors. Like he came out tonight and said that they're cooked. I wanted the Warriors to win if for no other reason than just to see Charles Barkley and his big mouth get shut up tonight for saying that, because at a minimum, the Warriors proved he's wrong there. I mean, they only lost this game by 4 points. And that's where my frustration comes from, is that this was a very winnable game. And I feel like they should have won this game. You know, if you add Draymond Green and then to the Suns, you add Bradley Beal, I think the Warriors handily win this game. What they were missing was Draymond's size, his mental toughness, his defense. But regardless, so no typical guarantees for me. But if you bet $200 in bonus, if you bet $5, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's like cash, $200. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Look, right now, the Locked On Ultimate NBA Season Preview is here, a 6-episode series with all 30 of our Locked On NBA team shows, from contenders to tankers. We go in depth into the biggest storylines heading into the season. Catch all 6 episodes on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And yes, I was included in that as well. It was a fun time. You can follow Trice High on Twitter at Trice High with some numbers and underscores in there. Just search Trice High. You'll find them. No problem. And his documentary right now on Stephen Curry, Wardell, is available on YouTube. Definitely go check that out. You talked about Steve Kerr being rigid when it comes to rotations. There was a sequence of the first half where Steve Kerr was about 2 or 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Stephen Curry, I think, just made a three-pointer. Stephen Curry looked like he was about to go on a roll, and then Steve Kerr yanks him, right? We've seen this complaint when it comes to Steve Kerr a lot, that sometimes he'll stick to these rigid rotation minutes that he has planned out well in advance, and which oftentimes will disrupt the flow of the game, right? And you saw the part that stuck out to me was when he was doing that, Chris Paul was being vocal about it and was telling Steve Kerr, like, are you sure you want to do this right now? Steph was about to go on a heater. He still pulls him out. And that really stuck out to me, because it was right there in plain sight that Kerr, you know, oftentimes is very rigid. And I don't know if that has something to do with Moody and his minute distribution tonight, and whether or not, and that's why we didn't see him play at all in the fourth quarter. But then again, he also cannot be rigid because he also pulled Andrew Wiggins, and we didn't see him finish the game. But it was kind of weird. Well, do you notice that a lot when you watch the Warriors with Steve Kerr, like in terms of his substitution patterns? We see a lot of complaints about that. What have your observation skills shown you?
I think the main thing you pointed out there at the beginning about, I noticed that exact sequence, and I saw a lot of people on Twitter that I follow, even non-Warriors people, notice that move by Kerr, and it was something that really stood out to me, because Curry did start off the game really well with a couple threes. He beat, I forget who it was, off the dribble. I think it was Nurkic, beat him off the dribble with a nice layup. And, you know, you got to thinking like, oh, he's about to kind of start. He's never about to take over. And he pulled him almost immediately, almost right after the layup. And you did see Chris Paul kind of lobbying to keep him in the game. Right. I think that's something Chris is going to add that maybe even Draymond doesn't really do that much to Kerr. And that's someone who's going to kind of challenge him a little bit in a way of like, hey, are you sure? You know,
yes,
I have this feeling I've seen firsthand Chris Paul speaking, I've seen firsthand what this guy can do when he heats up. He's been doing it to me for years. He's talking about Curry. Are you sure you want to take this man out the game right now? And I think that that's something that was interesting to see. Now, at the same time, throughout the game, obviously, it is kind of weird because he did make that move of benching Wiggins. I'll say benching lightly, taking him out the game. So there is things that he does that kind of comes off that game plan, but it's almost like the obvious stuff that maybe it's just maybe the obvious stuff to fans or people witnessing the game that he just doesn't do. And I'm sure there's reasons behind that. There's a whole team of coaches there. But it is something you notice and you're like, it seems like common sense, it seems like something that you would say, hey, this guy Moody is playing well tonight. Let's get him more time. Or Curry's really cooking right now. Let's keep him on the floor. But there's just something that comes with that. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not in the locker room or in the coaches meetings, but there is definitely something that just happens within those games. And the only thing that makes sense to me logically is that there's some kind of minutes restriction that he tries to keep players within, because at the end of the day, similar to what Coach Popovich does with the Spurs, is it's a long season and they try to preserve players and do the things they need to do to make sure players are ready to prepare or ready to play at their best level for 82 games. That's their main goal as a team. And so sometimes that might sacrifice winning a game.
Well, here's what small ball got for the Warriors. I mentioned before that in the first quarter or the first half, the Suns went on a 10-0 run against that small ball lineup. They later went on a 13-0 run against that small ball lineup. Later on in the fourth quarter, a pair of offensive rebounds, this was at approximately the 8:45 mark, gave the Suns an 11-0 run also against that small ball lineup. And there was Draymond Green was being interviewed. I believe this was in the second quarter. I can't remember exactly what part of the game. But it leads into the next subject I want to bring up because he was asked by Ian Eagle and Stan Van Gundy. Side note, Van Gundy is annoying to me as a broadcaster. I don't know if you agree with me on that or not. But that's a side note. That's a tangent we'll not get into right now. But they were interviewing Draymond, and they brought up to Draymond whether or not he thought size would be an issue. And Draymond responded first by saying, no, we've won championships before with small ball. Actually, you haven't. In all those 4 championship teams, you had a lot of size reinforcing you. And not to mention, like, Andre Iguodala was part of the death lineup. Andre Iguodala is not a small player. I mean, even though he's 6'6", he's got the wingspan, he's got athleticism. Warriors don't really have anything right now that is comparable. And they had players like David West, like JaVale McGee, Bielitsa, Otto Porter Jr. These are all guys that are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". So it's always weird when I'm hearing from players that we've won before without size, when that's not really true. But the part that really stuck out in that interview is that Draymond says he's not worried about it. And right as he said that, Nurkic grabbed an offensive board and put it in. The rebound, and this leads to the rebounding numbers because it was very one-sided in this game. The Suns grabbed a total of 60 rebounds. The Warriors grabbed 49, which is a huge difference. Second chance points. The Suns had 26. The Warriors had 20. So they got outscored by 6 there. Bigger picture. Again, Yusuf Nurkic, 14 rebounds, 14 boards. Kevin Durant grabbed 10 rebounds tonight. This is Yusuf Nurkic. When the Warriors play teams that have actual legitimate bigs, what the hell are they going to do? I mean, I feel like teams are going to feast on the Warriors. We saw in the preseason this twin tower lineup. We saw Saric out there with out there with Trace Jackson Davis. In the final game, we saw Saric out there with Looney. And then, of course, we don't see it at all in this game. Again, they got out-rebounded by 11. Trice, what do you think the solution is for this problem? I mean, if what the hell his name is, if he's eating you up inside, what the hell is Anthony Davis going to do? What is Jokic going to do? I'm really concerned there. What are your thoughts on that?
This is an issue that the Warriors had last season and ended up costing them a run at a championship, among other things. And it's a problem that is going to continue to be an issue until, unfortunately, I feel like the front office addresses it. And it seems like for this season, it's locked in. The only solutions that will be found have to come from in-house, because obviously like they've kind of stuck their feet in the ground of like they're not going to bring in anybody unless something changes over the course of the season, and obviously what they're doing is not working. If what they have done continues to not work, I should say. Now that being said, I agree with you. I think that if Nurkic can do what he did to them tonight off the boards, not only off the boards, I mean, realistically, down the final stretch of the game, he had that they over helped on the pick and roll with Devin Booker, the play that pretty much ended the game. Over helped on the pick and roll with Devin Booker. Nurkic rolled to the basket. He caught the ball over someone much smaller than him and finished at the rim. I mean, it was too easy. And it's something that the way they had to play the play, but the guys just weren't on the floor that needed to be there to protect the rim. Like you said, regardless of what Draymond said, there was always people, while the death lineup was what put games away and gave them the lead, they always had a JaVale McGee and Andrew Bogut, David West, like
Zaza
somebody in the paint who was going to do the dirty work, that was going to grab boards, and that was going to be some kind of threat interior on the interior. And they don't have that. They don't have that this year, at least not with what they've been playing. I like Dario as a rebounder. I think he can be a decent rebounder, but he can't be that force that you need as far as an athletic big in the paint that can grab the rebounds. Now, Trice, he showed flashes of being able to do that, but even he is undersized against an Anthony Davis or a Jokic. Like we're kind of getting into an era of kind of a resurgence of the big man in the NBA. And it's going to only get more so that way as guys like Victor Wembanyama become more of a force over, we're talking about in the years coming. And I mean, it's all jokes, but what happens interiorly for the Warriors when they play the Spurs or when they play a team with a big man of that caliber, that size? I mean, it's something that as revolutionary as the Warriors have been over the course of the dynastic run of having that small ball lineup that is able to put teams away with, just running guys off the floor, you also have to be able to control the paint. And they just don't have anybody on the roster at the moment, I feel like, that can do that at the level needed to beat a team like the Lakers or the Nuggets in a 7-game series when it matters most. I'm not talking about a random February game. I'm not talking about a random January game. I'm talking about in April, May, June, when the games are going to count the most. Do they have what it needs to be had to stop big teams in the paint? And they ain't got it right now. And it's something that they've got to figure out if they're going to capitalize and make a run this season.
Yeah. And again, look, they were missing Draymond Green, but and even Moody was the team's, I believe the team's leading rebounder the last preseason game. I think a lot of these problems would not be as noticeable, or maybe they win the game outright if Moody had played. I hope Kerr reflects on that. I'm going to play some sound from Kerr in just a moment. Got to first give some love to our other sponsor for this evening. I'm running very late here. My apologies for that. Locked On. And that is Game Time. Which is your absolute source for tickets. Look, folks, if you want to go to a Warriors game, if you want to go to a Niners game, if you want to go to a concert, whatever the event is, if you're looking for tickets, Game Time is your solution for how to find them and how to find the cheapest tickets. First and foremost, they offer a low price guarantee, meaning if you buy your tickets from Game Time and then you happen to see those same tickets, provided they're in the same row and section from another dealer, Game Time will refund the difference. That is a low price guarantee, folks, and that is freaking awesome. So right away, you have the cheapest tickets possible with Game Time. You also see a clear view of your seats with the Game Time app, meaning you know exactly how it's going to look from those seats, so you don't get any unpleasant surprises. And again, they're easy to find and buy tickets, whether it's last minute, whether it's weeks or months in advance. They have flash deals, they have zone deals. And one more time, folks, the low price guarantee. So download the Game Time app create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. LOCKEDNBA. Let me start that again. LOCKEDON NBA. Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
One final segment of Locked On Warriors. You can follow Trice High on Twitter at Trice High. Search for the name, though, because it's got a lot of numbers in there and whatnot. But again, more importantly, look up the documentary. It's called Wardell. It's on YouTube. It's now available. Fantastic job, Trice, on producing that. I want to play this sound from Steve Kerr. NBC Sports Bay Area just published this. So why don't we take a listen to hear what Coach has to say about tonight's game. I believe the theme of this answer here is offensive rebounds.
The offense moved. The points weren't coming, but did you like the way things were going there?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a little clunky offensively for much of the game, but that it felt like it was mainly the ball just wasn't going in. I thought in the first half we missed a lot of shots, and then we sort of let that affect our energy late in the second quarter. They went on that big run, but the guys really fought, competed. We got some good shots, some good possessions, did some good things, took care of the ball tonight. We stopped fouling in the second half, which helped us, kind of regain the momentum there in the third quarter. But their offensive rebounds were killers, and I thought Okogie was the difference tonight. Just his offensive boards,
Yep.
His hustle plays. I thought he was really key for them.
Okogie was an absolute killer tonight, and the dude stands 6'4". To put it in perspective, you don't always need height to dominate. But again, and when it's just crazy hearing Kerr talk about this, and then he's simultaneously running these small ball lineups. Now, look, it's only one game. There's 81 to go. Let's hope he learns from this. I want to read some stats from a few players. First of all, Chris Paul. This was his first game in a Warriors uniform, and it was a mixed reaction game. Like the negative was he missed his first 6 shots. He actually didn't make his first bucket until one of his traditional mid-range jumpers, and he didn't make that until the third quarter. Chris Paul finished tonight's game in 34 minutes of play. He was 4-15 from the field, did go 6 for 6 from the line, finished with 14 points, had 9 assists, 6 rebounds. Certainly not going to blame this loss on him. I would call it a good, not great game overall. Stephen Curry, he was in foul trouble a lot of the night, led all Warriors scorers with 27 points. 8 for 20 from the field, just 4 of 14 from beyond the arc. He was missing a lot of threes there. The youngsters, Jonathan Kuminga. What was your thoughts about Kuminga before I go into his numbers, Trice? What's your overall reaction to his? I mean, he got significant minutes, played 20 minutes. He finished the game, which was huge. What's your reaction to Kuminga's performance tonight?
I think it spoke a lot to the fact that he was on the floor at the end of the game. Like
Yeah.
you said, I think that was very telling for the progress that he's made in Kerr's eyes. And I think a lot of that goes for this. He had a great preseason. I mean, he looked really good. A lot of the vets on the team have spoken up about his growth. So I think that was a big sign. I mean, he obviously struggled at times tonight. It was a big game on a big stage against a good team. And he unfortunately, because of what we've talked about with the way that Kerr sometimes does young players, he hasn't got to experience those big minutes in those big moments as often as he probably should have, having been on a championship team and then a team that was successful last year as well. So I think it's just going to take time for him to continue to get those minutes in these regular season games and play those big roles. I think he's going to have some big games for the Warriors this year, and he's going to be important. Him and hopefully Moody being on the floor is going to be crucial.
Yep.
To the Warriors' success as much as anything else this year, because they need them to be big pieces of what the Warriors do on both ends of the floor.
Plus minus is a stat that sometimes is the furthest thing from reflecting reality, and then other times it's pretty spot on. And I feel like tonight was one of those nights where, for the most part, the plus minus told this story of what exactly went right and wrong in this game. And I'm going to share my screen to show you my box score here. Andrew Wiggins, minus 22. And it reflects just how awful of a performance it was. He wasn't playing good defense. Again, the one rebound really sticks out to me because Wiggins, with these small ball lineups, is typically your power forward. Now, I know some people will say Klay, because one time Steve Kerr mentioned that Klay will be defending power forwards, but Wiggins is normally the 4 in these small ball lineups. And to only have one rebound, to be ineffective defensively against both Durant and Devin Booker, who had a great game tonight, really stuck out. 10 points for him in 27 minutes of play. Kevon Looney was a minus 11. We talked about him, 7 points. He did grab 11 boards, but defensively, he was getting schooled. Another player that was killing it for the Suns tonight was a guy that I immediately disliked, Drew Eubanks. I didn't know much about him until this game, and now he's on my absolute hate list. Sports hate, of course. But again, and then Steph, even though he led all scores for the Warriors, not a great night for him either. One category that really stuck out to me for him was his defense, and in terms of just really being disappointing. He did not play good defensively. But that's ultimately, to me, when you have this Steph, Chris Paul backcourt, you're not going to be able to defend the perimeter that well. And the Suns, I mean, Okogie was hitting threes regularly. The Suns finished, and not a great shooting night for them from beyond the arc, 11 for 33, but those ones that went in were largely because you have Chris Paul and Steph out there. They're not big. Players can easily shoot over them. And then finishing up on the plus minus scene real fast, the Moses Moody one, again, I don't know if that is reflective of how he did, because all we're doing is singing his praises tonight, but he did finish a -6. I think that's largely from his brief playing time in the third quarter. And then Corey Joseph, again, I don't know what the hell he's doing playing over Brandon Pajemski. I hope that's another learning lesson here for Kerr. Or maybe the bigger learning lesson is, how about you stagger Steph and Chris Paul and not have those two be on the court together? To me, that's the biggest lesson among all this. Stop playing those two on the court together. They're both fantastic players. Have them lead their respective units out there. Like stagger them. Don't play them together. It is not necessary. Trice, any final thoughts from tonight's disappointing game?
Yeah, I think that my final thoughts would be, as I kind of segued my whole thoughts on the game, is the fact that it is important to keep perspective that it is game 1 of a long season, and this is a group that we have seen over the years try a lot of things in the regular season and kind of feel things out and see how they work. Obviously a lot of new wrinkles to this team, and it's important to keep that perspective of like they're trying to feel things out and figure out where to go. Now, that being said, there's obviously some things that are pretty concrete that need to be fixed, whether it be the rebounding issue, whether it be interior defense. And I think the big thing that you just mentioned being Steph and how Steph and CP3 are going to share the floor or not share the floor together. I think it's inevitable, probably within the next few games, that Chris Paul will be leading that second unit. Maybe they share brief stints where they kind of have like a mini death lineup where they leave them on the court for brief offensive explosions at a time, and then kind of make that transition to a more traditional defensive backcourt mate to pair with either one. I think that's kind of where the team's probably headed, and I'd like to see that personally. I think that's a great way you do it. You have Curry. Obviously, he's your star. He's your main point guard. You have brief moments where maybe Chris Paul comes in and you get that off-ball action with Chris Paul being more ball dominant and Curry being able to run off ball and see what that looks like. Obviously, that's an exciting thing. I saw him run that action with Klay Thompson a few times tonight, Chris Paul, and it looked really good, like them hitting slips and things like that. Like it forces the defense to make a lot of reads. And then after that brief stint of offensive kind of explosion, hopefully, then you kind of get one of them out. You get to give Steph his break or vice versa, and you bring in a more suitable player to share the backcourt with them, whether it be Gary Payton or whoever else, to be that defensive cushion that you need in the backcourt whenever you have that, kind of undersized backcourt at your disposal. So hopefully that's something we see very soon. I think it's going to happen sooner than later. I think you kind of had to, out of respect for Chris Paul, kind of give him that start, and then now you kind of get real. Okay, what's going to win us some basketball games? But again, not jumping shit by any means. It's the first game. I think it's important that Warriors fans keep that perspective, and I think that they are going to, as far as Klay Thompson and Wiggins, hopefully figure out as time goes. They're both really good scorers, and they both have proven that they are capable of doing great things on both ends of the floor at a high level, and hopefully they figure that out sooner than later.
Absolutely. I'll be back at this tomorrow with Kylan Mills. She's going to join me Wednesday and Friday, and that's when the next game is Friday. This doesn't get easier, folks. They're going to be in Sacramento. The great news, it would shock me if Draymond Green did not play. Now, granted, I said that about the opener. I was a little surprised he wasn't out there tonight, but Steve Kerr alluded to his conditioning being the primary reason, not necessarily his ankle. They're going to need him. But folks, thank you as always for tuning in. I'm going to go check in for a few minutes with my boy Larry Krueger. Go check out Trice High's documentary. It's called Wardell. It's available on YouTube. If you love Steph, you're going to love that film. Again, it's one game. They're 0-1, not the end of the world, but of course, especially when it's that close. I'd almost rather the Warriors get blown out, man. Close losses just drive me insane, but what are you going to do? Trice, thank you so much again, brother. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. This was awesome, and we'll be back at it tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Go Warriors. It is not the end of the world. They're going to be okay. Bye-bye!